Tremendous cute, tremendous cute, tremendous cute.
Who's your favorite pitmaster's favorite pitmaster?
Way!
What's going on, Tremendous Cute fans? It's your boy here, Wade Morris, owner Pitmaster Tremendous Cute, and I got a two-part video for you guys today. So we're going to be checking out, in the first video, part 1 of 2, how to trim a brisket, all right? I'm not doing this competition style. This is literally just for the backyard if you want to throw something on the pit for your family or you're having a little gathering for football. So we're going to be trimming up a brisket in the first video. And then in the second video, part 2 of 2, we're going to actually go through the cook process. And I spend quite a bit of time cutting the brisket up and showing you what a properly cooked brisket looks like. So with that, I'm going to shut up and smoke.
Alright, so let's get started with some general rules for trimming your brisket. First, you definitely want to make sure your brisket is cold, alright? Trying to trim these things with warm fat is not fun. It'll take you forever, and unless you have a very, very, very sharp knife, which you'll probably end up cutting yourself, you definitely want to make sure that your brisket is cold. So this one is right at about 36, 37 degrees. It's on the bottom shelf of my outside refrigerator, and I keep it on the coldest temp. So as I'm trimming, you'll see the second general rule. You want to keep about 1/4 inch of the fat cap on the top of the brisket. So there's a lot of trimming that's done on these things. This brisket is only about 15 pounds, but I'm going to go ahead and speed this video up so you can basically get the gist of, or catch me trimming this entire thing, alright? Next, you'll notice as I'm trimming the brisket, there's a stark contrast between the areas I haven't trimmed versus the areas that I have. The red, that reddish color that you see versus the white is what's what's left after I take that red silver skin, or that, it's not silver skin, but that red membrane off. Your rub is not going to penetrate that reddish color, so you want to make sure you remove as much of that as possible, and that's on all around the point, and it's definitely over the flat, as you can see. Alright, so you're going to pick the brisket up a little bit and basically try to get under there and remove as much of that as you possibly can. As I'm trimming this thing, you'll see me glide my hand over this brisket multiple times, and I'm doing that so I can gauge about how thick of the fat cap there is left, okay? By gliding my hand over it, I can feel about how thick that fat cap is. Once you do this enough times, you'll definitely be able to develop your own techniques and your own methods. So now with the brisket flipped over, I'm going to go ahead and remove that deckle. I'm going to start by getting my knife in there, and basically I'm using my knife, the feel of my knife, to see, or to guide me and figure out where the deckle ends and the meat begins. So you want to take your time with this, but use your knife. And there's a stark contrast between a knife going through fat versus a knife going through meat. All right, you'll see, and you'll be able to see, and you can see a little bit from where I'm showing you right now. This deckle, and the deckles on all briskets, it's huge. It's just a very large glob of fat that does not render down when you cook. So you want to go ahead and remove as much of that as possible. And it's all right if you take a little bit of meat with you or with it. So go ahead and get your knife in there and get a long cut, the long ways along the deckle, and then open it up and use your knife to make basically more precise cuts. And that way you're removing the deckle and you're not removing the meat. Again, there's a very, very, very stark contrast between the knife going through meat versus the knife going through that hard blob of fat. So just take your time, cut a couple of these things up, and after 2 or 3 briskets, it'll be very easy to see. It'll be very easy to figure out, hey, whether or not I'm cutting through the deckle versus cutting through the meat. That's how thick that thing is. Go ahead and check that out. I cut it open so I can kind of show you guys. That is not anything that is going to improve the flavor of your brisket. So you want to go ahead and cut it out, and then we're just going to go ahead and get that out of here. Alright, so now that we got that deckle removed, we're going to go ahead and remove some of the fat on the underside of the brisket. Alright, this is fat. Some of it's called silver skin. Again, it's kind of like the top of the brisket. Not your rub is not going to penetrate it, so you want to remove as much of it as possible. But again, if you're only cooking a backyard brisket, it's not that big of a deal because presentation at the end of the day is really just about the overall brisket versus individual slices. All right, so for a competition style, you'd want to remove as much of that as humanly possible. But for the purposes of backyard, we're just going to cut off some of this fat on the underside so that we can make sure our rub is sticking to our meat and it's not just falling off as soon as we put it on. Alright, so we got the brisket flipped over and we're going to attack some of the fat cap again a little bit more now, but focusing a little bit more up towards the point. Again, you're rubbing your hand along the top, and anywhere that as you're gliding your hand feels really hard, you want to kind of inspect that area, give that area a little bit more attention. Towards the flat, you're not going to have that big of a problem because the meat and the fat cap that you're dealing with is a lot thinner down there. So up at the point, there's another blob of fat. It's not a deckle, but it is a large blob of fat that you want to go ahead and remove as well. So rub your hand along the top of the brisket and just making sure that it's soft. And as you're rubbing your hand, if it feels soft to about 1/4 of an inch, then you're going good. So this right here is gray meat. All right, make one very clean cut. You don't have to go in very far. It's usually about 1/4 of an inch, and you can see that's the gray meat, and then you flip it over and you got the actual good meat. So you want to make sure that what you leave exposed is going to be that good meat. All right, so now with that removed, we're going to actually attack the deckle from the top of the brisket. So the deckle actually separates the point and the flat, and you want to make sure that you remove as much of it as you can from both sides. All right, so you got some more of that silver skin or that membrane that's covering the deckle on the opposite side. So you want to go ahead and remove that, and then again with your knife, just be very surgical and be very make very small cuts. All right, you don't want to take huge chunks out because you end up cutting a lot of the meat. You can see that I'm pointing right there to the brisket. I'm sorry, to the deckle, and that piece of fat is separating the flat and the point. That's exactly how it's supposed to look when you remove the deckle from both ends. You want to make sure, you want to be able to see where the flat and the point are sort of coming together and the fat cap that is separating the two. All right, that fat will render down during the cook, and that's perfectly fine. That's the fat that's going to render down, and that's the fat that's going to make our point very juicy, and it's going to help us keep our brisket or our point moist so that if we want to, we can make burnt ends at the end. And now for one final cut, we'll get rid of that last bit of gray meat, and then I'm going to pick this brisket up, and there you have it. That is the point, and that marbling is what's going to give us our black gold or burnt ends.
So that was how we trim up a brisket. All right, a couple main heavy hitting points. Make sure you remove that deckle. That's not fat that renders down. All right, not all fat is good fat. And then just make sure you trim the brisket up and you get it looking nice and even, nice and pretty. You want to get rid of any of those loose ends that are burned up when you put it on your pit. Okay, so that was part 1 of the video series. Be sure to head over and check out part 2, the cook. And with that, go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you guys back on the next video here at Tremendous Q. All right, shut up and smoke, and I'll see you guys later.